Most organizations in India have just rolled out their increments and bonuses. And one of the first things that employees typically do when they're informed of their increment and bonus letters is to call home to share the good news. Of late, however, these calls haven't been as satisfactory as they used to be. Increments and bonuses have largely trended down. How can organizations tailor their reward strategy to counter this perceived disappointment? Hi, my name is Dinkar Pawan. I'm part of the Human Capital Consulting practice at Deloitte. And to discuss this very important topic, I have with me Mr. Anandorup Ghose. Andy, as we call him, is our global rewards leader. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's a great time to do this session because as organizations, like you mentioned, have just done their pay cycles and corrections, they're also realizing the fact that over a period of time, this traditional model of fixed compensation, variable compensation, etc., may not be working as well as it might have done in the past.
Let's start with what textbooks teach us. There are three different components of compensation driving three different outcomes. There's fixed pay for time and skill, there is variable pay for the performance for the year gone by, and there are long-term incentives for value creation and retention. Most organizations in India, as well as globally, seem to have taken a strong liking to this model. Do you think it is working?
Actually, the point is that if you think of the structure fundamentally is time-tested and it has worked well for organizations. However, what is happening gradually in India in particular, and maybe in other parts of the world, you've seen these structures being modified by different kinds of companies, depending on the nature of requirements. And at this point of time, particularly in India, as we are seeing greater pressure on company financials, this traditional three-pronged structure of compensation might actually not be serving either employer or employees.
As per the Deloitte India Talent Outlook report, increment projections for FY 25-26 were expected to be some of the lowest in almost a decade. So unless one is frequently switching jobs or getting promoted, fixed pay growth has largely been muted. What's causing this drop?
So actually, if you take the fixed compensation increases, I think the thing that's been happening over a period of time is that take the last 20 years. In the first part of the 20s, from 2000 to 2010-11, that was a period when, barring a bit of a jolt before the financial crisis, this was a great time for pay increases in India. Then we basically started getting into a mode 2011 onwards when broadly pay increases were in the 10% range, all the way till perhaps the COVID years. And the first year of COVID was when most companies were not even able to afford pay increases. But then suddenly it flipped again and companies started giving significantly higher increases for the first couple of years after, in the COVID period, 21, 22, 23 maybe in some cases. But after that, post 22-23 period, you've started seeing a flatlining of pay increases, actually almost a decline, quite significantly a decline from what it used to be in the 2000 or 2011 to 20 period. And that's fundamentally premised on the fact that over the last 10 years, if you look at it, the revenue growth has been about 3 percentage points lower than compensation cost growth for companies. And when that happens, naturally there is pressure on companies to be able to afford such increases for people.
But in a country like India, where we perpetually seem to be in a war for talent, can we really afford to have low or no increments for a long period of time?
Actually, it's an interesting one because so first of all, organizations don't intend to lower fixed pay increases. It's an outcome of what their realities are. Let's take FY 25, the last financial year, as an example. Revenue growth and profit growth, PAT growth, for NSE 500 companies was 5 and 6% respectively. When your PAT grows at 6% and revenue grows at 5%, it is natural that companies will find it difficult to increase pay. The other thing that's happened in India, which is why perhaps companies are feeling a little bit more comfortable, is that attrition has come down dramatically. And attrition has very importantly come down for your middle management and above quite significantly. And that's where pay increases were even more discussed. I mean, the lower junior management pay levels, actually, if you see, the growth rates haven't tapered significantly. It's more the mid-management and above where this has hit the most.
You spoke about fixed costs. Let me also bring in variable cost into the equation. Charlie Munger famously said that you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Do you think we are being able to drive the right outcomes from our variable pay plans?
Again, that's the moot point here. See, okay, so what is variable pay intending to drive. Variable pay was basically meant as a way to drive performance at an individual level, which will then contribute to organizational performance and so on. What has happened, however, over a period of time is that with companies bringing in the CTC concept and introducing variable pay as a part of the CTC, it's gradually becoming an expectation from the employee that I will definitely, at the very least, get my 100% of target variable pay. And so when employees don't get that 100%, they see this as a major blow on their performance or their expectation or their relationship with the company. In the same token, companies have also found it very difficult to make their variable pay completely move up and down with how their business performance has been. We've been noticing this for a fairly long period of time, and as a matter of fact, this is a question we've asked very often: how variable is variable? Yeah. And if you look at the last even 10 years, the variability of outcomes, or variability of bonus payouts in organizations is actually not that significant.
So are you saying that organizations should tweak their variable pay plans or should stop using variable pay altogether?
Where does variable pay fundamentally help? Variable pay was intended to basically drive performance and also keep compensation up to a point variable, therefore not a fixed cost in the company's P&L. Now this variability has been reduced also because of the fact that companies have made this variable pay structure so much more complicated and complex. So if you think about it, a typical variable pay plan will have individual performance, a function performance, a business performance, some weightage, some percentage, this, that and the other. It's difficult for employees to understand, it's difficult for organizations to administer. Classically, the whole idea was different. If you look at the original, this Vroom's theory of motivation, that basically said, in very simple terms, it basically said, connect effort to outcome to rewards, and make that reward meaningful. Now, when you introduce so many complexities in that equation, the ability of that particular element of compensation to drive any behavior of any nature starts becoming more difficult. And I think fundamentally that's where variable pay plans are not working. I would say that organizations where individual performance has a clear outcome to perform it, let's take sales incentive or let's take productivity linked incentives. It's very clear, it's linear almost. I do more, I get more. I produce more, I get more. Variable pay will absolutely work there. And those are actually called more incentives and variable pay if you think about it. Where we are doing corporate variable pay plans, bonuses, etc., where very often team and organizational performance is more important than individual, that's where bonus plans are really failing.
So fixed pay increments are becoming tighter and bonuses aren't inspiring. Is the third level of stock-based compensation the answer then?
No, you're right. Actually, the interesting thing is, what's changed in India in the last, if you take 10 years, what's changed in India, number one, is that at an individual level, most of us are very comfortable with the whole idea of equity markets, stock markets and so on. Everybody's investing, SIP, mutual fund, equity, whatever. So the understanding of equity as a means of generating wealth is far more buried in depth into our psyche than it was earlier.
Yes.
Therefore, when companies think that stock-based compensation plans can only appeal to top management or senior management because they will understand equity, I think there's a fundamental flaw there. Employees expect and understand that equity makes money. And therefore, companies should think about identifying how they can expand the breadth of their equity programs to cover more and more employees who are anyway looking at equity as a way of generating wealth for themselves.
That's right.
Now, we have to also be clear when we are recommending equity as a vehicle for larger population, it comes with risks. But I think our hypothesis right now is that employees understand that risk. The average employee understands what the issues are with the stock markets, that it can fail, it can succeed and so on. For companies to take a decision that equity will only be for senior management and not for broader employees, I think is a thing of the past. There will be complications in terms of making it more broad-based, there will be dilution concerns, etc. But there are ways to manage all of these. And if you really want to see employees generate wealth by participating in something that they are contributing towards, then there's nothing better than equity plans right now to answer that question. In a squeezed environment where your P&L does not allow you to give, or cash flows don't allow you to give significantly higher compensation, maybe equity is an answer for a larger group of employees than we are seeing today.
Absolutely, and that's what we've seen in economies like US as well. Like if you take a metric like stock compensation cost as a ratio of the total wage bill, the ratio in US is multifold of the ratio in India. In India, that number tends to vary around 1 to 2%, and that number is way higher in the US. That signals a higher quantum of long-term incentives in the overall pay mix, and also a deeper coverage of long-term incentive awards. One of the things that I've observed with clients is that concerns tend to come through when dilution is not a possibility, or there's still this perception that employees may not favor deferred rewards. They want something here and now, or something that they have to wait 3-4 years for. What's your view?
Yeah, this point about deferred rewards is an important one, but the fact that employees expect that salary is something that should happen on a monthly, yearly, and defined frequency. Stock compensation, by virtue of that, is slightly longer term. But if you look at the messaging in our financial daily society, everywhere the messaging is invest now, benefit from compounding. So I think that there is a stronger appeal for that in the minds of people. Dilution is a concern, and but what we're noticing is more and more closely held companies, promoter-led companies. These companies are also becoming more comfortable to dilute a bit more for their employees. As a matter of fact, coverage of employees in a lot of these companies in the last few years has actually gone up.
Yeah.
I think the fundamental message is that if you want to drive real wealth creation in the right manner, there is no better vehicle than this. Institutional investors for the longest time have been pushing for it. Family-run businesses, promoters have for a long period of time started moving to this whole idea that this can actually generate better alignment and better outcomes for individuals and themselves. And there are obviously going to be niggling problems along the way, but can this not be solved? Absolutely.
You're right. At the end of the day, reward structures have a way of finding their own equilibrium every few years, and I think we are at the verge of one right now. The traditional levers of compensation are not necessarily broken, but it's perhaps time we use them with a little more intent and less by default. Andy Ghosh, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing your experience.